December 25th, 1941, Wong Nai Chung Gap, Hong Kong. Rain mixes with the stench of cordite and blood. Private William Billy Allister of the Winnipeg Grenadiers grips his Lee Enfield rifle with trembling hands. The jungle around him crackles with gunfire, not distant, but near, too near. Japanese voices bark orders through the mist, and the metallic clang of bayonets being fixed echoes off the rocks. Billy's breath comes in shallow bursts. His uniform is soaked, not from rain, but from the humidity of the subtropical island that had, only weeks ago, seemed like a peaceful outpost. Now, it's hell. Major John Crawford shouts over the chaos, "Hold your ground, boys, hold the ridge!" But it's hopeless. The Royal Rifles of Canada and the Winnipeg Grenadiers, fresh from the cold of Manitoba and Quebec, are outnumbered 5-1. Their air support is gone, their naval guns silenced, and their ammunition nearly spent. When the Japanese tanks crest the ridge, the Canadians know it's over. At 3:30 p.m., the white flag is raised. Hong Kong, Britain's eastern jewel, has fallen. By nightfall, over 1,600 Canadians are marched through the ruined streets, their boots slapping in unison on the wet pavement. Civilians watch in silence. Some cry, others look away. Billy sees something strange as they pass a row of warehouses. Japanese officers standing in front of massive steel doors, whispering orders, taking notes. He doesn't know it yet, but those doors conceal the first glimpse of the nightmare to come. That night, the prisoners are herded into what had once been the North Point refugee camp. The air smells of rot and sewage. Men collapse from exhaustion, and the guards, members of the Kempitai, the feared Japanese military police, beat them for falling. In the dim light of a burning building, Billy finds his friend, Corporal Frank McDougall, sitting against a wall, his head bleeding. "They said we're being sent to Japan," Frank whispers. "For what?" Billy asks. Frank shrugs weakly. "They didn't say, just work." Outside, a Japanese sergeant slams a rifle butt into another prisoner's ribs and shouts something that sounds like Benmu, a word none of the Canadians understand. The next morning, their long journey begins. They are packed into the holds of cargo ships, 300 men in a space smaller than a tennis court. The air is thick with the smell of vomit and diesel. Water is rationed, and men fight over drops that leak from condensation pipes. One guard, smiling thinly, mutters in broken English, "You work for Emperor." Weeks later, when the hatch finally opens and light floods in, the Canadians are stunned. The ship has docked, not in Hong Kong, not in Shanghai, but in Japan. The cold bites instantly. Snowflakes fall on faces that have forgotten what winter feels like. Around them rise the smokestacks of an enormous industrial complex. A sign reads Niigata Shipyard. The guards line the men up. A Japanese officer with a leather whip strides forward. He points to the sprawling dockyards, cranes, scaffolds, half-built ships looming like skeletons. "You build ship," he says flatly. "Work fast. Or die slow." The Canadians stare in disbelief. It doesn't make sense. Prisoners of war, forced to build ships for the enemy? Surely this violates every convention of war. But this is not Europe. This is the Pacific. And here, no one cares about conventions. The nightmare has only begun. The siren shrieks before dawn. In the bitter dark, men scramble from their bunks, if you can call them that, to form a line outside. Frost crunches under bare feet. The guards, wrapped in heavy coats, watch with blank expressions as the Canadians shiver in their torn uniforms. A voice barks through a megaphone, 10 minutes, then work! Billy Allister can barely stand. He's lost 15 pounds since arriving. Around him, faces have grown hollow, eyes sunken deep. Some men have begun wrapping their legs in rags soaked with motor oil to fend off frostbite. When the gates open, the cold hits harder. The yard stretches endlessly. Cranes, welding pits, and half-built hulls towering above like iron monsters. The clang of steel never stops. Japanese overseers pace the catwalks, shouting orders. A sign nailed to a pole reads, "No work, no rice." The men are split into crews. Billy's group is sent to rivet ship plates under the supervision of civilian engineers, but something feels off. The ships they're working on aren't transports or fishing trawlers, they're warships. One day, Sergeant Yoshida, a guard with broken English, leans close to sneer at Billy. "You build ship for Emperor. Ship goes south. kill your friends. At first, Billy doesn't believe him. It sounds like psychological torture or another trick. But weeks later, he overhears a civilian foreman mutter, "Kai Gun, the Imperial Navy." The truth hits like a hammer. They're not repairing infrastructure, they're building weapons. Every rivet, every welded plate, every bolt they drive into place will carry Japanese guns into battle against the Allies, against Canadians. It's a crime so blatant, it defies reason. The Geneva Convention forbids forcing POWs to aid the enemy war effort. But here, under the rising sun, the law is as dead as the men who try to invoke it. The conditions worsen. Meals shrink to a handful of rice and miso soup. Beatings become routine. The guards carry bamboo canes and use them for sport. One afternoon, a man collapses beside the slipway, Private Robert McLeod, a radio operator from Quebec. The foreman orders him up. When he doesn't move, a guard strikes him in the neck, once, twice. He doesn't get up again. The work continues around the body. Does no one dare stop? By February, dysentery spreads through the camp. The sick are carried to a hut the men call the hospital, though it's little more than a shed with straw mats and buckets. There's no medicine, only death. Billy scrawls a message on a piece of scrap metal with a nail. To whoever finds this, we were here. We were forced to build their ships. Tell them. He hides it beneath a beam near the docks, a silent act of rebellion. Nights are worse than days. The wind howls through broken windows. Men whisper about home, about wives, parents, sweethearts. But even that feels dangerous, like tempting fate. Sometimes, the guards make them stand outside for hours, facing the rising sun, shouting, "Banzai!" until their voices give out. By spring, the first ship leaves the dock. The prisoners are forced to line up and watch as it's launched into the harbour. Japanese officers cheer. A military band plays. Billy stares at the ship's hull, gleaming black under the rising sun, and feels hollow. That ship, built with their blood, will kill men wearing the same uniform he does. He grips the rail until his knuckles turn white. "God forgive us," he whispers. Behind him, Frank McDougall murmurs. "We're ghosts already." That night, Billy dreams of the ocean swallowing the ship whole. But when he wakes, the sound he hears isn't waves. It's the whistle of the morning siren, summoning them to build another one. And so the nightmare repeats. July 942, Niigata Harbor, Japan. The summer air is suffocating. Humidity clings to the skin like oil, and the stench of sweat, diesel, and decay seeps into everything. Billy Allister crouches beneath the scaffolding of Dock No. 4, hammering rivets with hands so blistered they bleed through the bandages. The guards are on edge today as whispers spread. A high-ranking naval inspector is coming. Everyone is to work faster as cleaner. Even the civilians move with nervous energy. Frank McDougall, now little more than skin and bone, leans close to Billy and mutters, "They're hiding something big. Heard one of the engineers say the word Yamato. Means great harmony, or something worse." Billy nods, but keeps his head down. The wrong word, the wrong glance can mean a beating or a bullet. At noon, a black car pulls up. A Japanese admiral steps out, trailed by officers with clipboards. They inspect the site in silence, murmuring to one another as they pass. One of them points to the blueprints laid out on a table. Billy's eyes catch a glimpse. A massive hull, triple gun turrets, displacement figures unlike anything he's seen. It hits him like a thunderclap. These aren't just supply ships. They're warships, heavy cruisers, maybe even battleships for the Imperial Japanese Navy. Later that evening, a sympathetic civilian labourer, a Korean named Juan, sneaks Billy a tattered piece of paper. On it are handwritten notes in Japanese and English fragments. Kure Arsenal at Subcontract Niigata, Hull Assembly for Naval Reinforcement, PO Labour Efficiency, Classified. Billy stares at the words until they blur. Classified. POW Labour! This was no accident. The Japanese command had intentionally distributed POWs to industrial sites, shipyards, mines, steel mills, using them as expendable cogs to keep the Empire's war machine turning. They were never meant to survive. The next day, the men are marched into a new section of the yard, a cavernous warehouse filled with cranes and thick steel plating. The noise is deafening. Sparks rain down from welders above like orange snow. Frank whispers, "We're not just slaves, we're tools." Billy doesn't answer. He's staring at something painted on the bulkhead, a white circle with a red sunburst. fresh paint. That's when he realizes they're building a naval auxiliary, a refueling vessel, part of Japan's Pacific Fleet. The ships they're constructing here will carry fuel and supplies to aircraft carriers, the same carriers bombing Allied troops in the South Pacific. Their own labor is prolonging the war. That night, during roll call, the camp commander, Captain Hirot, reads an announcement. His voice is cold, clinical. You are laborers of the Emperor. Work well and you live. Work slow and you die. Japan's victory depends on your hands. The men stand silent, staring ahead. Frank mutters under his breath. Then may those hands break. Billy almost laughs. But there's nothing funny left in the world. By autumn, deaths outnumber the living. Of the 600 Canadians captured in Hong Kong, nearly half are gone, beaten, starved, or consumed by disease. The survivors are skeletal, their uniforms reduced to rags. Yet even as they fade, they find small ways to resist. Bolts left loose, blueprints smudged, tiny acts of sabotage that slow production by hours, sometimes days. Each delay is a victory, each mistake a quiet form of revenge. Billy whispers one night, "If we can't fight, we can rot their ships from the inside." Frank grins through cracked lips. "Then let's give them ghosts in their engines." But the Japanese overseers are no fools. Inspections tighten, beatings increase. Men vanish overnight. The rumor spreads that the Kempi Tai, the military police, have begun interrogations in the basement. Still, the prisoners refuse to stop. It's the only power they have left. One night, Juan slips Billy another message. Tokyo knows. POW work hidden from Geneva. Special labor units. Secret to all nations. Billy reads it and feels the ground tilt beneath him. The outside world has no idea. The Red Cross reports Japan claims humane conditions. No one knows they're being used to build ships of war. The truth will die here unless someone carries it home. And for Billy, that thought becomes his new mission, to survive long enough to tell the world what really happened in Japan's shipyards. February 1943, Niigata Camp Number 5. The winter has come back with a vengeance. Snow piles against the barracks. The wind screams through the cracks like a living thing. Inside, the men huddle together under thin blankets that smell of mildew. The floorboards creak with every shift of weight, not from movement, but from the bones of men wasting away. Private Billy Allister no longer counts days. He measures time by the dead. Every morning, 2 or 3 bodies are carried out, wrapped in straw mat, dumped behind the warehouse, and covered in snow. The guards stop giving names. They just call it cleanup. In the shipyard, work continues without pause. The prisoners' breaths form small clouds as they strike metal, their tools freezing to their fingers. The sound of hammers echoes endlessly, like the beating heart of some mechanical beast that refuses to die. Frank McDougall, his body shrunken to a shadow, collapses beside a half-welded plate. A guard rushes over, shouting, and brings the rifle butt down hard on his shoulder. Billy lunges instinctively, and the blow meant for Frank cracks across his own jaw. He tastes blood. The guard laughs, calls him Bakayaro, idiot, and kicks him aside. Billy drags himself back to his feet, spitting blood onto the snow. The taste reminds him of the home, of biting his lip in the cold back in Winnipeg, waiting for the bus. It's the only piece of normal he has left. That night, he and Frank sit against the barracks wall, staring through the cracks at the rising moon. Frank whispers, "They'll work us till we're gone. That's the plan." Billy nods. "I know. That's why we can't let them forget we were here." He pulls from his boot a small metal tag. Once part of a ship's hull, now etched with crude words scratched by a nail. Canada, built in chains. Frank smiles weakly. Think anyone will ever see it? Billy doesn't answer, but in his mind, he sees it. A diver someday, decades later, finding that tag in the wreckage of a ship and realizing what it meant. The guards begin calling them lazy beasts. Production quotas rise. The men grow weaker. Rumors spread. The Allies are advancing in the Pacific. The Americans have landed in Guadalcanal. Some prisoners dare to hope. Others laugh bitterly, calling it another lie. But then, one morning, a massive explosion rocks the harbor. Everyone freezes. Smoke rises from the horizon, black, thick, towering. The guards rush to the radio hut, shouting in panic. The word Yamashiro is repeated again and again. Billy doesn't know what it means. Not yet, but the next day, he overhears a civilian whispering that one of Japan's auxiliary tankers was hit by Allied submarines. Billy's heart pounds. The ships they built, the very ones they were forced to assemble, are being sunk. Their slave labourers feeding a war that is slowly, finally, turning against their captors. By spring, the Japanese grow crueler. Beatings turn to executions. One prisoner, Sergeant Donald McGillivray, is caught trying to smuggle a note out through a civilian worker. He's dragged in front of the men, forced to kneel, and shot. His body is left there for a full day. When the guards finally remove him, Billy whispers to Frank, "He tried to tell the world." Frank stares at the ground. "Then we'll tell it for him." April 1943, a small miracle. A Red Cross package arrives, the first in months. Inside are tins of condensed milk, cigarettes, and chocolate. The men nearly cry. But when they open the tins, they discover most of them have been emptied and refilled with sawdust. The guards laugh as they watch the prisoners' faces. It's a cruelty so casual it almost feels inhuman. That night, the camp doctor, a captured British surgeon named Lieutenant Malcolm Fraser, takes Billy aside. His voice is low. "They're dying faster than we can bury them. I've seen starvation, but not like this. The Japanese are hiding it from the outside world." He opens his coat and shows Billy a folded paper, a crude map, drawn in pencil. It marks the location of every camp around Niigata, every place where Allied prisoners are being used for forced labour. "If any of us get out," Fraser says, "this has to reach someone." Billy stares at the map. It feels heavier than any weapon he's ever held. "How?" he asks. Fraser looks toward the horizon. "We pray the war ends before we do." By June, the camp has become a graveyard of whispers. The guards talk about shortages, American bombers, and something called B-29s that can reach the Japanese mainland. For the first time, the prisoners sense fear not in themselves but in their captors. And for the first time in years, Billy dares to believe that maybe, just maybe, the world hasn't forgotten them after all. But belief alone won't save them. The Japanese have a saying, "The nail that sticks out gets hammered down." And soon, the hammer will fall again. July 1944, Niigata, Japan. The air is thick and strange that morning. The guards seem uneasy, glancing toward the sky as if waiting for something. The usual barked orders come later than usual. No one says why. Billy Allister notices the silence. No trains, no whistles, no factory sirens, just the wind whistling across the docks. And then it comes. A distant hum at first, like bees in a far-off field. It grows into a roar. Men look up from the scaffolds, shielding their eyes from the sun. The horizon flashes, silver glints slicing through the blue. Frank mutters, "Planes! Christ, they're planes!" Then, the sky falls apart. The first explosions hit the harbour. Anti-aircraft guns bark from every rooftop. The ground shakes under their feet. Japanese officers scream orders. Sirens wail across the port. Billy dives for cover as shockwaves split the air. The Allied bombers, B-29 super fortresses, have come to Niigata. For the first time in 3 years, the prisoners cheer through the fear. The shipyards that had been their prison and their curse are now the target. The very docks they built for their captors erupt in fire and smoke. But the joy is short-lived. The guards go berserk. They drag prisoners from the barracks and force them into fire lines to dig out rubble, while bombs are still falling. Shells explode nearby, spraying shards of hot metal. Billy sees 2 men cut down instantly. He hauls Frank into a drainage ditch as a blast tears open the ground beside them. The dock cranes collapse like skeletal monsters dying in slow motion. Flames roll across the fuel tanks. The sky is black with smoke, and in that inferno, Billy sees it. The half-finished hull of the ship they'd spent months building. It's burning, melting, collapsing into the sea. Every bolt, every rivet, every wound of theirs, dissolving into fire. Frank laughs bitterly through the choking smoke. Guess our ghost finally got in. The raid lasts less than an hour. When the planes disappear, the camp is a ruin. The guards are silent now, too stunned to hit anyone. By nightfall, the prisoners are ordered to clear the wreckage. Billy drags twisted beams off smouldering piles of debris. The smell of burning oil and flesh is everywhere. And there, buried beneath a slab of steel, he finds something impossible. The small metal tag he had etched months ago, bent but still legible. Canada, built in chains. He holds it tight to the edges cutting into his palm. Frank watches him quietly. "Don't lose it again," he says. Billy nods. Not this time. The next morning, a new commander arrives from Tokyo. His name is Lieutenant Colonel Sato, a man with the look of a bureaucrat but the temper of a fanatic. He gathers the surviving prisoners in the yard. His interpreter reads in cold English. "You have seen what happens to enemies of the Emperor. You will rebuild. Double speed. No excuses." Billy stares straight ahead, jaw clenched. Rebuild what? The docks are ash, the cranes twisted ruins. But the order is absolute, and so they start again, rebuilding the weapons of the men who bombed them. A cruel irony, sharper than the winter wind. By 1945, starvation is total. The guards grow thinner too, the Empire is bleeding and everyone knows it. One night, Billy sees Sato pacing by the fence, muttering to himself about American devils and the shame of surrender. 2 weeks later, Allied planes return, but this time, there's no bombing. They drop leaflets. The prisoners aren't allowed to read them, but one flutters close enough for Billy to grab. He hides it under his shirt, then reads it in the latrine by candlelight. The paper shows the American flag, and below it, in Japanese and English, "Japan's cities are burning where the end is near. Hold on. Liberation is coming." He folds it carefully, presses it against his chest, and whispers to Frank. They know. They're coming for us. But in August, the world changes again. A blinding light in Hiroshima, another in Nagasaki. Whispers spread faster than bullets. A new weapon. The end of the war. The guards go quiet. Radios buzz all night. On August 15th, 1945, Captain Sato calls the prisoners into the yard. His hands tremble as he reads an order from Tokyo. The Emperor has spoken. The war is over. For a long moment, no one moves. Then Frank drops to his knees and laughs. The sound of a man too broken to cry. Billy looks up at the sky, where no planes fly anymore, and feels nothing at first. Just silence. Then slowly it hits him. He's still alive. When Allied troops finally reach Niigata weeks later, they find a camp of ghosts, men weighing barely 90 pounds, standing among the ashes of a shipyard that once fed an empire. A Canadian officer steps forward and salutes. "Gentlemen," he says softly, "you're going home." Billy doesn't answer. He just reaches into his pocket and hands the officer a small metal tag, the one that had survived fire, bombs, and despair. The officer reads it aloud, his voice breaking. "Canada, built in chains." Billy looks out toward the sea, where the burned hulls still lie half-sunken. "Now the world will know," he says. "Today, those ships are gone, rusted beneath the Pacific, their stories nearly forgotten. But the men who built them in chains carried a secret that Japan could never erase. Proof that even in slavery, the human spirit can resist. If you found this story moving, take a moment to like this video. It helps us keep these lost chapters of history alive. And tell me in the comments what you think. Should more of these hidden stories from Canada's soldiers be told? Don't forget to subscribe for more untold World War II stories. Stories that deserve to be remembered, not rewritten.